leadership really boils down to 4 words. Be yourself with skill.
So welcome to the Who's Elvis Round Here podcast. This is where I get to hang out with some of the coolest leaders on the planet and find out what makes them tick and what brings them some energy and creates the conditions for our people to be amazing. And I'm delighted to be joined with an old friend of mine, David Micklem. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Chris. Great to see you.
It's a pleasure. A lot of people are saying, look, how do you get your guests? Well, you know, what I tend to do is I ask all my old mates on because I like to hang out with them. Unfortunately, a lot of my mates have got some wonderful things to share, and David has loads. So, hey, David, introduce yourself to the listeners. Who are you? What do you get up to? And give us a bit of a flavour for what makes you tick.
I'm a theatre producer who doesn't really like theatre. By which I mean I don't really like sitting in the dark for 2.5 hours and not getting fiddled with. I like theatre that's a lot more about, it's different because I'm in the room with it. So I'm into sort of more immersive, experiential kinds of performance practice.
Excellent. And you've got loads of experience with this. Give us a bit of a sense for where it is you've played that's got you to where you are.
Yeah, so I've run a couple of theatres. I've run one in South London called Battersea Arts Centre for 6 years, which is the kind of engine room of what's coming next in British theatre, and an amazing space. And for the last dozen years, I've been the go-to guy if you want to get your theatre back on track again. So I go into theatre organisations, arts organisations that are going through some kind of change and help them find their way into a much more sustainable future.
Wonderful. So it's a bit of a fixer in some ways, helping leadership teams get clear on where they're going, you know, getting some energy behind it, changing their plans, stepping things up, which
Exactly.
it's quite a skill. So you get to work with lots of different people in diverse settings. I've always found that when we have talked to people on this podcast who have an arts background, we learn things that we wouldn't ordinarily learn when we talk to people from a traditional business background. So that's why I'm so chuffed to have you here. You're also a writer, David.
I'm a writer too. I'm a fiction writer.
A humble writer, because you are bragging about that.
Exactly. Published fiction writer. And actually those two things, although they might sound quite different, arts consultant and writer, I think are really the same thing. Because what I'm helping theatres and arts organisations do is tell a different story about where they want to be in the future. And
it's as if you just planned that little segue for me into my first question.
Just like we did it in rehearsal.
Because my first question is, so what is the story you love to tell that people love to hear?
Okay, so you're going to have to bear with me on this one a bit. It's a very arts and culture story, but I think it does have a relationship to business more widely. So get in my time machine with me, Chris, and we're going to go back 150 years to the Victorian era. And we might have thought of ourselves then as subjects of the Queen. And our principal media was print. It was newspapers, and we might have chosen our daily newspaper, and it told us what to think, and it told us the truth, and we felt that we were subjects. And many of us worked in factories where the boss had all the ideas, and we ran around as workers doing their work for them. So that was 150 years ago. Let's get back in the time machine, and we're going to zoom over to the 1960s. And we no longer think of ourselves as subjects. We think of ourselves as consumers. And our principal media is the television. And it tells us things and it sells us things. And we've got a bit of choice. We increasingly have more channels. You know, we go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 channels of TV. And we are still quite passive recipients of that stuff that we watch, that media that we watch. And now here we are in 2026. Can you believe it? And our principal media is the internet. It's social and it's multidimensional and it's global. And we're not subjects or consumers. So we're citizens now in 2026. And we want to be involved in everything. We create content. You make music. I write things. We put it out into the world. And within minutes, people are commenting and saying, that's amazing. Or, I don't like that bit. But we're much more used to multidimensional global interaction. And the point that I make, the reason for this story is that too many of our arts and culture organizations are still run like we're subjects. So they have somebody at the top, often a man, who's got all the ideas, and everybody else is running around trying to make that happen. And I guess the reason for the story and the journey I want to take arts organizations on is to get it to be more democratic. So everybody who's got a stake in that organization feels like they've got something that they can say and contribute to it, whether they're staff or customers. So let's get our arts and culture organizations and perhaps other businesses to work a bit more like the internet. Fast moving, multidimensional, everyone's got a say. You might be the assistant box office assistant who just works Tuesday afternoons, but you've probably got a brilliant idea for how this theatre might work better and differently in the future.
And I think there's a direct parallel with business, obviously, because a lot of businesses have been run by a singular man who has the ideas and gets everybody to run around them. So I think that's still continuing. And actually, the best organisations know how to engage their people on improving things every day and actually, owning the future rather than being passive. So I totally see that. And actually, I think that similar things true for society, isn't it? I mean, a lot of people feel incredibly passive in society right now. We see our news feeds and we go, I can't do anything about this craziness. I can't get stuck in. And actually, there seems to be, quite a wave of positive passion and saying, no, I want to have an influence here. I want to do something better. How can I somehow show up every day and improve this world in my own way?
Definitely.
So I think the parallels work really well.
Good. In the world that I work in, the world of arts and culture, we would call that cultural democracy. The idea that cultural organizations are more democratic. They listen to more people, take more soundings about what they're going to do and how, rather than dictatorships, which often some organizations can look a bit like benign dictatorships.
I understand that. And look, and you need leadership. You need people to ultimately make decisions because we can't all, when you say democratic, I've tried having everyone make decisions and it's a bit of a disaster. However, the democracy comes from hearing and having a dialogue and a conversation before those decisions are ultimately made. And actually, if you can go with consensus, sometimes it's great. Sometimes you have to cut through. But at least everyone's involved in that and they're party to them.
Definitely. 100%. Love it.
Look at that. We're agreeing, David.
Hey, we can disagree now. I don't agree with that.
So look, when it comes to bringing the genius out of our people, what is the number one thing that you think is essential to do that?
Create the conditions that enable your teams to be creative. And it's interesting. I work in the arts and cultural sector, which you think would be full of people who are turning up to work and saying, hey, I'm a creative person. And actually, we're really bad at doing that. We look to the artists as being the only people that make art. And I think what we often do in our theatres, in our art centres, in our concert halls, is we employ lots of people who are terrified of admitting that they have a kind of creative practice. And one of the things that I often do when I'm running workshops, right at the beginning, when I'm getting people to introduce themselves, is to tell me and the rest of the room, what do you do in your free time that's creative? And you hear people who are, experimental gardeners and lute players and, passionate poetry writers and et cetera, et cetera. And often that will come as a complete shock to colleagues who've been working with them for 5 years, because we don't come to work to be creative. The creative team is over there. It's only the people that have got creative in their title that are creative. So that would be my thing to unlock the genius, is unlock the creativity that exists in all of us. And I think that that's what makes us different from any other species in the solar system, is we are creative. We have imaginations. We can do extraordinary things with this that dogs and cats, love them as I do, can't do. So unlock the creativity, give permission to play, let people have fun with this stuff, make mistakes, and unlock the true human that we've all got within us. The inner 8-year-old that probably didn't say, oh, I can't sing, or I can't write, I haven't been given permission to do that. Go back to the inner 8-year-old that says, I can dance, or I can sing, or I can write stories.
And it's a part of our innate human makeup. I mean, we wouldn't have evolved as a species without creativity. It's part of who we are and how we develop. It's interesting because obviously the same thing happens in business. It's probably even more pronounced in the arts because we can be quite reverential to the ones who are obviously shining lights of creativity, because that's kind of what the business model is based upon. If you don't have it, nothing else works, right? But in business, I see it all the time with innovation departments, or there's a creative agency that we've got, or actually that's what marketing do.
Yeah.
And it's so easy for people to just go, well, if they do it, I don't. That's not my job. That's not how I add value. That's not part of my identity. And I think it's a very sad situation, because not only does obviously the business lose all that value, but actually people lose their energy, because if they just show up doing the same stuff all the time, they don't think they can improve things in their own way, you lose all that motivation and all that mojo that's potentially tapped. And I like your memory thing, because I think saying, where else are you creative? Everyone's got these experiences, so people tap into that. Then, have you got any other tips on how to bring out creativity in an everyday fashion?
One of the things that I was co-founder of an organization called 64 Million Artists, and the central conceit of that organization is that there are 64 million artists in the UK right now, but many of us have lost our connection with that inner artist, the inner kind of playful 8-year-old who built dens or made up stories or sung songs, did all that sort of stuff. And so one of the things that we have advocated through that organization is that the more often you do some sort of creative practice, 20 or 30 minutes a day, the more it becomes a bit like going to the gym. You stop feeling like the ache of, oh, that was a bit embarrassing, or I felt a bit kind of vulnerable doing that thing.
Yeah.
Do it every day, whether it's writing for 30 minutes or it's practicing the guitar or it's inventing a fantasy for your kids or whatever it might be. The more often you do it, the more regular it becomes, and the more I think you can then integrate that into your professional life. And you can bring that person to work, the person that's used to problem solving, because you've got 2 8 and 10-year-olds who are fighting over something, and you've somehow got to create a game for them to play that's going to kind of break them out of that. So I think it's, the analogy I use is it's like a kind of mental health gym rather than a physical gym, is do something creative every day. And anybody who says, but David, I haven't got 30 minutes. You've got no idea what my life's like. You have got 30 minutes. You probably spend 30 minutes on Instagram or on looking at emails that are easily looked at another time, or watching the news for the 3rd time that day. Everybody's got 30 minutes, or get up 30 minutes earlier, or go to bed 30 minutes later, or take a half hour extra in your lunch break and do something creative.
It's just about prioritization. If it's important to you, you'll find it. As they say, if this room was on fire, we'd find time to get out. So, it's where's your focus? And I think creativity is definitely a muscle. And I've lived this myself. So, I started, and I did marketing in my 20s. So I've been in the kind of creative realms for many years. And people always say to me, well, how come you just go and write books, and then you write music and put it on Spotify, and I don't understand it. And for me, it's like, well, once you plug into the idea that every day's a chance to express and try and experiment, you just naturally, it's not a fearful process. It just becomes who you are.
Yeah.
And actually, it's one of the few beliefs that I think you can kind of generalize around. If you get good at it at home, doing it with, a pad and some crayons, playing around in that experiment, actually, I think does improve your confidence in experimenting in a meeting. Yep. It does tend to work that way, because a lot of things you don't generalize. You don't learn it in one field and then it means that you can translate it to another. But with creativity, I think it does, because all you're really doing is saying, I believe what's in here is interesting, and I'm going to get out there and see what happens.
Yep. It's our superpower, Chris. It is our superpower. I really believe that. More than any other sort of skill that we might bring to the table. I think it's the thing that, if we give ourselves permission to unlock it, it's infinite.
Yeah, I agree. And look, and actually, you're quite disciplined on this, aren't you? Because writing books is not easy. And look, I do business books, a little bit easier. You do novels. You do proper writing. But it doesn't just happen, does it?
It doesn't just happen. But if you prioritize your time and you're very enthralled to your diary, you can make it happen. So if I have a day and it says writing day, I'm not answering emails. I'm not looking at my phone. I'm writing. I've got all the distractions out of the way. And then back to my mental health gym analogy. If I'm writing for a week, I'm a much better writer by Friday than I was on the Monday.
Sure.
Because I've been doing it all week. In the same way as if you were doing sit-ups all week, you'd have a washboard stomach by Friday. Maybe not by Friday, but you know what I mean? It's kind of, the more often you do it, the less the voice in your head, which says, what are you doing? You're wasting your time. You're no good at this. The more that voice recedes into the distance, and you can focus on the voice which is saying, this is the story you need to write. These are the words you need to put on the page. So yeah, I would say the more that you can prioritize doing that, even if it's just in a J.K. Rowling way, half an hour grabbed with a cup of coffee in a Edinburgh cafe once a day while your kids are at the childminder, it still makes a difference. Regular and often.
Well, she did all right, didn't she?
She's done pretty well, yeah.
She's done okay.
With a bob or two.
Learnings in that. So obviously we have a very similar passion around creativity. One of the reasons we're mates, and God, it makes the world technicolor and interesting. And every day you can do something that moves things forward in a way that you're excited by. So there's so much to be said for it. But obviously, business often is not set up for it because we tend to be quite risk avoidant. We tend to be about it's about efficiency and productivity and all those things. And there's lots of things I look at in business that really get my goat. Now I know you don't necessarily always work in traditional business, but they're still organisations and they still have HR and they've got salaries and they have review. All those sort of things go on. So what's the thing that you notice that's just nuts that gets your goat in how organisations are led and managed?
It's a bit of a generalisation.
Yeah.
But I know that I see lots of business leaders, arts leaders, who are trying to fit into their idea of what they should be like and how they should work. They think there's a kind of model. I need to be like this. I need to be more dictatorial, or I need to be more confident in my views, or I need to fit into a certain box. And 20 years ago, I did a business course at Henley Business School, and I got a half an hour meeting with the principal of Henley Business School. And I said, talk to me about leadership. And he said, I can talk to you about leadership. I've read hundreds of books on leadership, and I've written about 3 or 4 as well. And he said to me, leadership really boils down to 4 words. Be yourself with skill. And I think that is right. I think those organizations that I work with that are thriving, their business leaders are being themselves with skill. They're not trying to be somebody else's version of a leader. They're not trying to do the kind of, I think this is how you do it, or I think my team would expect me to do it in this way. They're showing up as themselves and they're doing it to the best of their ability all the time. And so, that's what I try and apply in my work and try and give other leaders confidence to do. If you're a bit of a kind of playful, creative character, bring that person to work. Be yourself with skill. Don't kind of try and suppress the creative or the playful because you think that actually you need to be very serious if you're running an art gallery, or you need to be very kind of focused on the numbers and confident about the things that actually aren't in your kind of wheelhouse. So be yourself with skill would be my borrowed, stolen quote.
Well, it's a nicely stolen headline. I like it. Now, I'm going to go slightly for a second, and I stroke my little beard. I wonder how many leaders know who they are. So I think we should be ourselves, but I find so many people confused as to what that means. We've taken on so many different identities, different roles over time. Actually knowing who the real David Micklem is, the one who's got super good energy because you're in flow, because you're just being yourself and you're not trying to force anything. Actually, people take quite a long time to discover that. I think. I don't think it happens that naturally in business. People tend to rely on some very odd structured ways to see how they're developing, with annual reviews and all that rubbish, which doesn't help. As far as, I guess my experience with the arts is it's always been quite exposing. So people tend to learn quite quickly who they are because it tends to get called out a little bit more. Is that your experience? Is that how you think people should find out? Have you got any tips on it?
I struggle with this question, Chris. I think there are I sometimes find some of the best leaders in the arts and cultural sector aren't the bosses. They're not the people who've got leader in their title or leader in their job description. They're managing up. They're actually doing extraordinary work in a departmental context or with a particular kind of focus. And those are the real kind of engine rooms of organisation. I'm going to be very gendered here and say that often those people are women, and they perhaps struggle more than men to see themselves in leadership positions. But I see them leading brilliantly from other places in the organisation. And invariably, I will try and encourage those people to think of themselves as leaders and to go for those more senior jobs in arts and culture institutions. So, yeah, I think that, I mean, I'm sure as there is in any business area, arts and culture has for too long been dominated by too many men, often who've got a bullying way of working in the, it's my way or the highway, not very expansive, not enabling other people's kind of creativity and voices to come through. That is changing, has been changing and is changing, but there's still some bad practice out there. I'm not sure that's answered your question, but it's my...
No, well, look, I said I went deep. I didn't expect you to just offer me the answer on it, David.
It's an answer.
That would be unfair. But look, it's interesting also, often in business we see some quite bad behaviours. We see people being stuck in ruts and roles, very traditional stuff. And it happens everywhere. It happens in the arts. It happens, in all the places, in the music industry. It happens in film. It happens all over the place just because of actually a lot of innate human design. But just because we've got the design doesn't mean we shouldn't work through it. And I think things are getting better that way. And I think I'm seeing people being more confident in being themselves now than I have in my historical work in lots of different organizations. But people seem to be a lot more comfortable. Go, well, this is what feels right to me. I'm happier to go with it. And I know that might not be accepted by everyone, but I'm really cool with that because the ones that like it really like it. And therefore I'll have better flow and I'll connect with them. So I think
I would like to say the same is true in arts and culture. I don't think it is. There was a moment during the pandemic where, because everything had to shut, the whole of the industry had a kind of long, hard look at itself and kind of collectively agreed, when we come out of this thing, when we reopen our theatres and our concert halls and our art galleries, let's be different. Let's have a different kind of leadership. Let's have different people in positions of leadership. Let's continue to do all this really good work around diversity and inclusion and access that we've been doing, and let's create some more space for different kinds of people who don't look like me to get into those roles. And we came out of the pandemic into a cost of living crisis, decreasing public funding for arts and culture, a bit of a shit show, a bit of a clusterfuck. And unfortunately, I think some of that really good work that was happening during the pandemic has gone backwards. And so, one of the things that I'm fighting for is to try and get back into that place we were a few years ago, where people were saying all the right things about trying to really change who got to lead these organizations and who gets to play with them, who gets to kind of engage with them. But sadly, I think there's been a bit of a about turn and we've gone back a few steps rather than going forward.
Well, I don't think, and again, I don't think that's just arts. I think when the pressure hits, people go back to safety. They start to do what they know. And therefore, changing behaviour just seems too risky, So I think a lot of companies have done that, especially with the unpredictability of everything that's happening in the geopolitical sphere. I get it. But I had James Sills on recently, who's a fantastic guy. I mentioned him; he's a choir starter. He had this big thing, which is I believe in equal and opposite. I really do. With all this craziness and all this negativity going on, I do believe there is an opposite force of more love, more compassion, more authenticity of people, and more embracing the fact that we could do things in a different way. So I kind of like the way he was kind of looking at that, and which brings me on to my final question really. What gives you hope, David?
Ooh, that's a nice question for a Monday afternoon. I mean, there's lots of reasons to be devoid of hope at the moment. You've only got to look at your phone and think we are doomed, to quote Dad's Army. Whether it's Epstein or Trump or global insecurities or Greenland, all of that sort of stuff gives us, I think, real, genuine cause to feel anxious. But I do feel hopeful. I have to say, I feel hopeful when I put my phone down or I put my phone away. I do think that those little bits of expensive technology that are often in our pockets and buzzing, they have their uses.
Sure.
But I think a lot of that sense of hopelessness that many of us sometimes feel is driven by the algorithms and isn't driven by what we experience in the real world. So when I get off my phone and I go and work with people in a city in the UK who are running an arts organisation, I feel incredibly hopeful because I see new generations of people who've got great ideas, great energy, want to make a difference, and it's not the stuff I'm being fed through algorithms on my very binary, are you pro this or are you anti that? So I think there's much more compassion and love and energy and creativity in the real world than you might think if you only looked at life through the online world.
Hell yes, David. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I've just been on the road for the last 2 weeks, working with lots of different groups, and I've been buzzing because same thing. You know, we are designed to be with people. We're social beasts to actually connect with them, and deep and meaningful stuff that is about life and how we improve things is so exciting. And there's so much talent out there, so much energy. You know, but as you say, if we look through the world through our devices, they're designed to create fear responses because that's what makes it sticky. So it's always going to be when we look at them, and no wonder so many people are stressed because if you believe everything in your phone, we are doomed. It's all over. I mean, I think I took my phone on last night for about 5 minutes just to see anything interesting out there. Apparently, the banks are all about to collapse. We have to take our cash out and we have to bury it in the garden. I don't know what it is, but
I missed
that's
that
the listing. What? And I've heard this stuff before, but it's like just constant. I mean, if you lived by it, you would be under threat 24/7. When you're in a room,
definitely, and particularly, I would say with younger people. You know, when you've got a plastic brain, if that is your principal form of kind of communication with people, it's no wonder that there is a generation of younger people who are suffering with anxiety and mental health issues. I meet some of those same people in the room. We put all of our phones away, we put them on silent, we put them in our bags, and you see people coming to life, and you see a lot of that anxiety and fear and hopelessness exit very quickly through the window. So, they've got their uses, but I think we need a reboot.
We don't want to turn back time. And tech is useful to move us forward, but it's our relationship with it that's the issue. And if we get on that, I'm totally with you. There's a frightening graph: time, mental health, anxiety, depression, and it's going along like that. 2011, especially for teenagers. 2011, when smartphones came out.
Yep.
It's obvious why so many people are banning them in schools. Yeah, so I'm with you. So people over tech is what gives you hope.
Yeah, people remembering that we are amazing animals, and we're not AI bots, we're not robots. It's funny, which maybe it's not funny. It's just noticeable that if I'm feeling like, the stories, the noise from all that external stuff is getting too much, I think my advice to anybody, to myself particularly, but to anybody, is go out in nature. I live in London. I've got a big park at the end of the road. Even go for a lap around the park. Don't take your phone. Look at the squirrels. Look at the parakeets. Can you believe it? In London, in a park. Reconnect with nature, and it's amazing how just that very simple reboot of being a body in motion, in fresh air, in nature, I think can just put things in perspective in ways in which it's very difficult to do on hour 3, sitting on your sofa, doom scrolling, looking at what's happening in the world. So I think get out in nature, run up a hill and sit at the top of the hill for an hour without looking at your phone, and see what comes. See what ideas come. See the world through different eyes. So let's use our phones for the things that they're really good at, but let's not make them an integral part of our life, because we are nature and we need to be in nature to feel alive.
We certainly are nature, and that gives me hope too. So what a lovely, lovely place to end. So look, you've got no doubt exciting things coming up, including having a bowl of ramen with me quite soon when I come to London.
Can't wait.
But beyond that, what else is coming up in your life that gives you a bit of a buzz?
I'm spending a lot of time in Edinburgh, Britain's most beautiful city, working with some theatres up there. And again, I think in that spirit of, you might think that all the news is pretty grim, or all the news about arts and culture is grim, or even the news about theatre is grim. Lots of theatres are closing. I'm working with 3 theatres in Edinburgh that feel like they are absolutely thriving and have got some great ideas and some innovative new ways of imagining how they might reconnect with audiences in the future. So I still feel as excited by that now at the tender age of as I did 30 years ago when I first started working in theatre.
Wonderful.
So, yeah,
Well, look,
excited about that.
there's always some bright spots out there, and it's great you're working with them. Look, and every time you're in the room, there's a bit more brightness for me, David. It's lovely to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us. And is that a bit of Universal Works you're wearing?
Yes, I am the brand ambassador for Universal
Excellent.
Works.
We're looking for sponsors, David. That's the only
Very
reason
good, very good. Yeah.
It's either going to be that or it's going to be Bone Daddies for Ramen. One of the two.
We're not going to get sponsored by iPhone, though.
Unlikely after this chat. No. Well, look, thank you so much for sharing your insights. It's been an absolute joy as ever.
It's been a pleasure, Chris. Thank you.
And if anyone is interested, check out David's writing. It is fantastic. Where do they find it, David?
All on the website, davidmicklem.com.
Perfect. So, well, look, go well, and hopefully I will see you soon.
Can't wait. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.